Hello and welcome to Bible Study Time, where we talk about learn more about Jesus. Our series is The Sheep and His Shepherd. But before I get ahead of myself, let me welcome all of you, the E-campus, on campus, off campus, Indiana campus, Hardin County campus, Louisville campus, Doscomana, everybody. Welcome to our Bible study time. And we are so pleased and so glad that you joined us. Our lesson is, we're still doing the series, The Sheep and His Shepherd. And our lesson today, where he leads me, I will follow. Where he leads me, I will follow. Now we were doing the isness of God. And when we started in Psalms 23, then we changed it to the sheep and his shepherd. So after studying this lesson, the students will realize that Christ meets every need in our lives, every need. He feeds us, he leads us throughout our journey. He loves and cares for us. He is our shepherd. And as we discussed last week, we are his sheep. Now, in Israel, as in other societies, a shepherd's work was considered, now check this out, the lowest of all works. If a family needed a shepherd, it was always the youngest son, like David, who had to do the task. And it was an unpleasant assignment. Why? Because shepherds had to live with the sheep 24 hours a day, and the task of caring for them was unending. It was day after day, day and night, summer and winter, spring or fall, fair weather, foul weather. They labored to nourish the sheep. And so they labored to not only nourish, but to guide and to protect the sheep. But now, who in their right mind who want to be a shepherd? Shepherds also were considered unclean, so they couldn't go to the temple. Now I ask again, who in their right mind would choose to be a shepherd? And yet, Jehovah God has chosen to be our shepherd. Woo, that's shouting territory right there. David said, the great God of the universe has stooped to take such care of you and me. I don't think, sisters and brothers, that we really realize how much God has stooped for us. Because first of all, he had to stoop to come down and be one of us. Just think about it. Think about it. Go back in your mind. When you get ready to pick up your child, your grandchild, or baby, you have to bend. You have to get down to raise them up. And that is exactly what God has done. So when Jesus, the incarnate Son of God, was ministering on earth, he said, I am the good shepherd. Listen to how Jesus puts it in John chapter 10. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them. He doesn't walk behind them. He doesn't drive them. He leads them. He goes before them. And the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Now we're going to jump down to verse 11. I am, this is Jesus speaking, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep. Oh, you have to hear me now. And flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am, he says it again, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. Now, I've often said that I think I need to have a class called Shouting 101, because we don't know when to shout. But what I just read to you is shouting territory. Verse 16 is one of the greatest verses, and we as Gentiles should be shouting, because when he says, and I have other sheep, that's us, because we wasn't of the fold. I have other sheep that are not of this fold. We were not of the fold. We were considered outsiders. But he said, I have other sheep, and I must bring them also. And they will listen to my voice. In fact, when you go over a couple of chapters, maybe chapter 10, Jesus is teaching, and I'm in 10 already, so it's late in this chapter. While Jesus is teaching, Philip goes to Andrew and say, there are some Greeks here who want to see Jesus. So Andrew and Philip go to Jesus and say, some Greeks want to see you. And Jesus turns his head and says, the hour has now come. That's what he's talking about. I need to go get this other flock. That's us, folks. That's us. This is shouting territory. Now, I want you to look at this picture, because this is important. If you don't get nothing else, we may not finish the lesson. But look at that. You see the shepherd leading the sheep out. That's what he does. He puts them in the sheepfold. This fold, you see, is built up. He said, the sheepfold, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door is same as a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. So we see the shepherd leading his sheep out of the fold. He stands there at the door. Let me tell you how important this right here, this is in the picture. I'm glad we got it up there so that you can see. The fold, you see the walls and the door. That is the fold, and the fold is the church. Remember? Because we never have service without what? Opening the doors of the church. Woo, God Almighty. Listen to me. So We open the door of the church and for all those who might want to enter in and become a part of Jesus' flock. Now, Jesus says, I am. He says it in verse 9 of this same scripture. I am the door. So, just like this room, I had to come through the door. When you go to a room, you have to go through the door. So Jesus is saying, I am the door, not the door of your house. He's talking about the door of the church. So that's how come we open it, so you can come into Jesus. See, now you come through the door. He says to him, anybody else, a thief try to climb over the wall. Well, now let me say this. If you try to get in the church any other way than except through Jesus Christ, I'm talking about the true church. I ain't talking about other things. I'm talking about the church of Jesus Christ. You have to come through the door. You must come through him. And if you try to get in any other way than coming in through the door, why would you come over the walls? Why would you come through the windows? Only a thief would try to do that. So he said, to him, the gatekeeper opens. Well, wait a minute. He who enters, look at verse 2, but he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him. To who? To the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens. The gatekeeper, who's the gatekeeper? It's not Jesus. He the door. The gatekeeper is the Holy Spirit who prompts us to want to come through the door. And the door is Jesus. So you want to get in to his flock? Come through the door. Come to him. Now, look at this. Jump on down a little bit. I am the good shepherd. Verse 14. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. Do you hear that's an awful lot of no's. So, in other words, I want you to catch this. What he's saying here, he said, my sheep know me. I know them. He's implying more than just mere acquaintance or contact. It means that the shepherd is so familiar with his sheep. He has handled them so much that he knows every trait, knows every habit, knows every characteristic. He can predict their behavior. And let me say, he can do that under any circumstance. He understands all and knows all. And we need to know our sheep, our shepherd, the same way. We need to know him. It's more than singing, what's that song? Yes, I know him for myself. Yeah, and that song says, yes, I know Jesus. Yes, I know him for myself. He woke me up this morning. I saw a brand new dawning. You need to know when you know him and know that you know him, then under any circumstances, you will not become anxious because you know the shepherd. Okay, let's go on to our lesson now. I want to thank the producer for putting that up so that I know I can go on because she know I probably stay there the rest of the day. It said, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. In other words, yes, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but I will fear no evil. Why? Because I know my shepherd. Because thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Woo, that's mighty good stuff there, folks. Now, let's look at the shepherd guides. That's the first thing. And Jesus never made light of the cost involved in following him. In fact, he made it painfully clear that it was a rugged life of rigid self-denial. Deny thyself. Take up your cross, he said, and follow me. Then he called the crowd to him. See, Mark 8:34. With his disciples and said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Then Proverbs 14:12 said, there's a way that seems right to a man. It may seem right, but its end is the way of death. That was important. So important that he says it again in Proverbs 16:25. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And there are times things see, oh, that way seems right to us, but my sisters and brothers, it may not be the right path. Now, it was so important that he said it twice. We need 7 fresh attitudes that we have to acquire if we want him to lead us. And they are the equivalent of progressive forward movement onto new grounds with God. Now, what are they? They are, 1, instead of loving myself most, I am willing to love Christ best and others more than myself. See, when you say you got, when we say joy, you got Jesus first, others, and yourself for last. And so, when we are willing to love Christ best, first and foremost, and others more than ourselves. Second attitude, instead of being one of the crowd, I am willing to be singled out, set apart from the gang. You know, we like to be one of the crowd. We want to be in with the in crowd. But instead of being one of the crowd, I'm willing to be singled out. Are you? The third attitude or characteristic, instead of insisting on my rights, I am willing to forego them in favor of others. I would say, well, let them go first. Even though it might be my time. How many times has somebody stepped back and said, you can go first, you can go ahead. Fourth, instead of being boss, and we love being boss now. We love being the boss. I am willing to be at the bottom of the heap. Did you hear what I said? Instead of being boss, I am willing to be at the bottom of the heap. Fifth, instead of finding fault with life and always saying, well, why? Well, why did this happen to me? Well, why do I have to go? Why do I? That's what children say. Well, why I have to do it? It's not my time. Well, why me? I did it the last time. That changes. I am willing to accept every circumstance of life in an attitude of gratitude. Lord, I thank you. See, I can't think of it right. It's in Acts, maybe Acts chapter 4, maybe, where Peter and John had been put into jail and they had been brought before the Sanhedrin court, and then they had been beaten and turned aloof. They wasn't supposed to say anything about Jesus anymore. They went out shouting. Why? Because they had been found worthy to suffer for his name. Woo! But instead, we want to know, well, why me? Why not you? The sixth attitude, instead of exercising and asserting my will, I learned to cooperate with his wishes and comply with his will. Not my way, O Lord, but thine. Thy will be done, not mine. And then the last one, instead of choosing my own way, I am willing to choose to follow Christ's way. Simply to do what he asks me to do. Simply to do what he tells me to do. So where he leads me, I will follow. Where does he lead me? Well, he leads me in the path of righteousness. This is the path of safety, especially when we are surrounded by danger and snares which are ready to trap us. And in other words, we need to learn how to do the right thing. He leads me in the truth. He leads me in the truth. And the path of truth keeps me from going astray, especially when I'm surrounded by false teaching, which are trying to deceive me. So he leads me. He leads me beside still water, not water that's in a turmoil, rushing water, because sheep cannot lie down when the waters are rushing. He leads me to the rock that is higher than I. I love it that the producer is showing y'all some great stuff this morning. You see, the sheep are following. You see, you remember last week's lesson? I told you sheep don't worry, they follow. You see, the sheep are following. They not looking at one another and say, where he taking us? Where we going? I don't know. They just follow. Woo! He leads me in the way everlasting. He leads me in the way of profit. And that means this is a path of fruitfulness and blessing, which will prevent us from wasting our lives in futile and barren efforts. We waste so much time on something that don't mean nothing. But he also leads us in the wilderness. And the wilderness is the path of trials and testing. Yeah, he leads us through testing time, and that is to prove our love and obedience to God. This path helps us. See, let me say this. This path helps us to rely on his promises, especially when we go through wilderness experience, when we are sorrowful, when we are hurting, and he comes and helps us. Look what Deuteronomy 8:2-3 says. You must remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and to prove you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He humbled you and let you suffer hunger. Look at this. Woo, this is great stuff. This is great stuff. He humbled you and let you suffer hunger. And then when you suffer hunger, he fed you with manna. And you didn't even know what manna was. In fact, that's what you said. What is this? That's what manna means. What is this? Which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord. Woo, God Almighty. Now, sheep also need water to survive. And having said that, let me take just a sip because I need this. And they will not drink from noisy, turbulent water. They require a well or a slow flowing stream. So he leads us beside still water. He doesn't lead us to drink and water rushing and roaring. No, no, no. He's not going to take the sheep to Niagara Falls to drink and let them rest, because sheep will never rest there. Sheep need rest. And our faithful, loving shepherd encourages us that we might rest. Now, let's look at, and let me say this. He makes us lie down in green pastures. Now, I tell you, my producer's on it today. Look at this sheep. The shepherd detects in studying the Psalms. It must always remember that this is a sheep in the care of the good shepherd. So that being the case, you might wonder why that verse in there, he restored my soul. I mean, come on now. Surely it's assumed that anyone in the good shepherd's care could never become so distressed, especially in his soul, that he need to be restored. But the fact remains that it does happen. Why? Because sheep become, as you see right here at this picture, cast down. And cast down is the old English shepherd's term for a sheep that has turned on its back and cannot get up again by itself. This sheep that is down will not be able to get up. And the cast sheep is a very pathetic sight. Lying on his back, all they can do. Now, let me say this. I know because I heard somebody thinking it. Maybe your dog or your cat just did it. Flipped on their back and they just rubbed their back against the floor and they look like, ooh, that felt so good. Yeah, with the dog and the cat, but a sheep can't do that. A sheep must always have the ground under its feet. They lay down, they sit down, but if they roll over on their side and they no longer their feet or they the ground is soft and they sink into the ground and their feet don't touch the ground, it's called cast. And as you see, without help, this sheep will die. Now, let me keep that on there while I talk about this, please. How does a sheep become cast down? Well, they look for a soft spot to lay down, or they have too much wool, are they too fat? Now, and remember we said last week we are the sheep. So the question has to be, how does such a sheep relate to us? How do they get in that kind of trouble? In other words, how do we get in that kind of trouble? I'm glad you asked. So, they look for a soft spot to lie down. And that's us. Some Christians want the easy way out. They want the easy way out. Now, I'm going to tell you, several years ago, or more than 7 years ago, when I was had both of my knees repaired at the same time, and people say, whoa, at the same time, I had to go to rehab. And rehab is not easy. But for me to be able to get the use of my knees again, I could not take the easy way out. And too many of us in church, we want the easy way out. Or they have too much wool. Remember I said they have too much wool. Many times we try to carry the load ourselves, the problems ourselves. They become too heavy. Not only we going to carry our problem, we're going to carry our children's problem, we're going to carry everybody's problem. Everybody. Can't do it. Or, as we said, too fat. Sometimes the sheep get a little bit too fat. And there are some fat Christians. They the ones that don't do anything. They come into the church, they shout it out, and they just ooh, 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 and they don't serve in the ministry, they don't do anything, and they just get too fat. But let me just kind of tell you what happens with the shepherd corrects. If the shepherd, if you put that sheep that's down back on the thing, because I want to talk to him for a minute. There he is. Thank you. If that shepherd does not arrive on the scene within a reasonable short time. Now, in the summer, with the hot weather we've been having, woo, that sheep wouldn't last but a couple of hours before it dies. In the cool weather, it might last a day or two. But the sheep cannot get up by itself. So the first thing the shepherd does when he comes out, or in the mornings, or during the day, he will look up to the sky to see if any vultures or buzzards are circling. If he does, he thinks, ooh, I got a flock down. There they are. And the first thought, if I'm missing one of my sheep is cast somewhere, I must go and search for it and set him on his feet again. See, it is not only the shepherd who keeps a sharp eye out on the sheep. These fellas, buzzards, vultures, dogs, coyotes, cougars, they all sitting there. Because when they see a sheep down, they don't rush. They sit there just like that and wait. Say he can't get up. He can't get up. So the shepherd has to come and find it. That is the beauty of the lost sheep parable or story that Jesus tells. Luke 15:4-6. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one? The one is that important, which is lost, until he finds it. And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulder, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep, which was lost. Now let me tell you what it does. I got to tell you what it does. As soon as the shepherd, you see him, he reached that cashew, the first thing he must do is roll him over on his side. And that's what he does. And that relieves the pressure that are the gases that have built up in the stomach and other areas. He rolls him over. And if the sheep has been down there for a long time, he has to straddle him. You see, he straddles him and lift her up onto her feet. Then, straddling the sheep, he holds her up erect. He rubs her limbs. He has to rub the limbs so the circulation will begin to flow through her legs. He just doesn't get it up and the sheep is ready to roam and run. Because even when he sets the sheep up on her feet, she may go back down again. She stumbles, staggers, she collapses. He picks her up again. Do you know what this shepherd does? Oh, God Almighty. He rubs her legs. He massages her legs. That's what I was talking about when I went to therapy. What they did, they would rub my legs. They would massage my legs after I got through with all of the exercising, because they knew that my legs were bothering me. And all the time that the shepherd is rubbing the legs, he's talking to her. He sings to her. Don't you know that God sings over us? Go to Zephaniah. Go to Zephaniah in the Old Testament, and it tells you that God sings over you. And there are times he has to pick us up, rubs our heart, and he sings over us. And little by little, the feeling becomes back in the legs, and the sheep will start to walk steady and surely, and it will dash away to join the others. And what does she have? She's got another chance to live just a little while longer. Well, what knocks us off our feet? What causes us to be cast down? Doubt. When we start doubting God, then that's what causes us to stumble. We might get a bad doctor's report that says we've got, our heart has gotten bad, or we have cancer or diabetes. The doctor's report can knock us down. Disappointment. You had longed for something and you are disappointed. Diseases can knock us down. You see, to see how cast down this person is, just down in the dumps. Divorce and death and nothing can knock us down and make us feel like we will never be able to get up again, like death. When someone you love leaves, you wonder, how am I going to make it? And the psalmist said, why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. But I like the way Message says it. So why are you down in the dumps, dear soul? Why are you crying the blues? And many of us, we cried the blues, we sang the blues. Then look, what's the remedy? Fix my eyes on God, because soon I'll be praising again. Why? Because he puts a smile on my face. He's my God. And so before I leave, I want to take you to this song. It's called the Lost Sheep. Safe were the 99 in the fold. Safe though the night was stormy and cold. But said the shepherd, when counting them o'er, one sheep is missing. There should be one more. Although his feet were weary and worn, and those his hands were rent and torn, even though the road was rugged and steep, still the good shepherd sought long for his sheep. There in the night he heard a faint cry from the lost sheep were ready to die. Then in his arms to shield from the cold, he brought the lost one safe back to the fold. The shepherd went out to search for his sheep, and all through the night on a cold mountain steep, he sought till he found him. With love bands he bound him, and I was that one lost sheep. If the Lord is not your shepherd, or you are the lost sheep who has wandered away from the fold, you can make the choice now to be connected or reconnected to the fold. We offer you Jesus, and we invite you to join us, St. Stephen Church, the Hump Day Life Group. We invite you to come, go with us. We will do you good. So, you want to join us? If you want to join the St. Stephen Church or the Hump Day Life Group, just contact us at New Start at ssclive.org, or call 502-583-6798, extension 0, and tell them, or leave it on the voicemail, that you want to join St. Stephen. Tell them what you want. I promise you, you will be contacted by a person from Member Services to help you get connected. And if you don't want to do that, here's what you can do. Send me an email to gsnelson@ssclive.org, and I will contact you. Or I have a person from Member Services to contact you. We want you to become a part of the flock and come in through the door, come in through Christ Jesus, and follow after him. Because where he leads me, I will follow. I will go with him all the way. Well, you join in with us next week. And our lesson is the walk of faith. The walk of faith. We will still be in Psalms number 23. So you can read it again and again, because once we really know what Psalms 23 is telling us, we will appreciate it even more. Well, that's all I got for you today. See you next week when we will talk more about Jesus. Be blessed.